Welcome to this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Charlene Aaron. Today on the broadcast, forced to give birth in chains. Hear the latest update on Christian mother Miriam Ibrahim, still stuck in Sudan.
But first, we go to the CBN newsroom for the latest updates on today's news.
President Obama is trying to shrug off criticism over his visit to Texas to address the growing border crisis without an actual trip to the border. As Charlene Aaron reports, even his own party is criticizing him.
The president's trip to Texas included a political fundraiser and a meeting with local leaders, but no visit to the U.S. southern border to see the unfolding immigration crisis.
I'm not interested in photo ops. I'm interested in solving a problem.
The GOP has been blasting the president for his decision to stay away from the border. He's met with Texas Governor Rick Perry, who's been highly critical of how his administration has handled the crisis.
The president has sent powerful messages time after time by his policies, by nuances, that it is okay to come to the United States and you can come across and you'll be accepted in open arms.
But even Democrats say the president needs to see firsthand the effects of the surge of unaccompanied minors crossing illegally.
He's so close to the border. And let me say this, when I saw, and I hate to use the word bizarre, but under the circumstances, when he is shown playing pool in Colorado, drinking a beer, and he can't even go 242 miles to the Texas border. And plus, if he doesn't want to go down to the border, there's the Lackland Air Force Base that is where HSS is holding some of the young kids from the border. He can at least make that trip to San Antonio.
Texas Republican Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz contend the president's efforts to relax some deportations have contributed to rumors circulating in Central America that once here, migrant kids will be allowed to stay. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Chris Lebron with the Texas Baptists is one of the faith leaders who met with the president, and he joins us now by Skype. Chris, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. It's a privilege to be here and to share with you.
Tell us about the meeting. What kinds of people were there? What was the mood, the atmosphere like?
This was a genuine roundtable discussion with 10 people around an issue, and there was back and forth, and everyone spoke.
Where does the faith community go from here, basically?
My emphasis to the president, as a leader of a faith-based group, is that that we be involved as much as we can with these children. And many times in these situations, the term of support and involvement kind of are used interchangeably to mean the same thing, and they're very distinctively different. And I encourage the president to seek our involvement and not just our support. And from the standpoint that if he or the other officials want our support, he could get that pretty easy.
What does that involvement look like to you?
Maybe English as a second language classes. It could even involve, and has involved in some of these other shelters, non-sectarian, ecumenical kind of worship services, church services.
Chris Lebron with the Texas Baptists. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time, and may you and the others be led of the Lord as you work with the kids and the other immigrants that are coming across the border.
Thank you so much.
Another coalition of faith leaders working on finding a solution to the nation's border crisis is the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, serving over 40,000 churches in the U.S. and more than 500,000 worldwide. The NHCLC is launching a campaign to keep unaccompanied minors from crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, president of NHCLC, joins us now via Skype to talk more about these efforts. Dr. Rodriguez, many of your churches are ministering in the heart of this crisis, and yet you've decided on speaking some tough love to these parents. Tell us why.
Churches on both sides of the border, on the southern border of the United States, many of our Latino evangelical churches stand engaged on a daily basis, attempting to minister, to provide resources to these families, to these children that have come unaccompanied to the United States. Now, we looked strategically and said, we're going to have to go to Central America and Mexico, meet with the key evangelical leaders of corresponding nations and regions, and say the following: do not, let me repeat, do not send your children to the American border. Here's the idea. In meeting with pastors in Central America, we heard from them the angst, the consternation, parents desiring for their children to have a better day. They sent them to America. Now, here's the problem. These children come to America without their parents. They enter into America. They're leaving the Mero Salvatrucha, the big gang in El Salvador. Gang infestation, drug, violence. They arrive in East LA. The possibility and the probability, statistically speaking, of these children engaging in gangs and in drugs without their parents in East LA is almost equivalent to the probability that they are experiencing in Central America, which means the number one firewall against the many dangers and ills the parents are afraid of actually lie in the hands of the parents committed to Christ and providing a safe family structure. So parents in Latin America, if you love your children, do not send your children to the U.S. border.
And Dr. Rodriguez, you just met with church leaders from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. How committed are they to that message about not sending their kids to the border?
They are committed. We're launching a PSA campaign in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala, a strong public service campaign where pastors are speaking not only from their pulpits, saying, please do not send your children. It is wrong to send your children to the U.S. border by themselves. They may very well be exploited. The possibility of little girls being raped, children being sex trafficked. It is an amazing sort of threat or risk that you're taking by letting your children go up. So those PSA announcements are going to appear on radio, prayerfully and hopefully on television, definitely on print media, in conveying this strong clarion call. Please do not send your children to the U.S. border. Commit them to Christ. Provide a strong family structure in your nation. Pray for an awakening and believing to God that the best is yet to come.
Okay. Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, thank you for your insights and for getting the word out.
You're welcome.
In other news, 3 days into Israel's crackdown on Palestinian terrorists, and the rockets are still flying. Israel is striking back at Hamas hideouts in Operation Protective Edge. So far, its Air Force has struck nearly 500 targets. But as Chris Mitchell reports, Israeli civilians are still running for their lives.
Millions of Israeli civilians are taking cover in bomb shelters as Hamas continues its rocket and missile bombardment out of Gaza. The terror group has fired over 200 rockets into Israel since Monday, a situation Israel's ambassador to the United States told CBN News is intolerable.
We've got about 3/4 of our population that had to go into bomb shelters. So to put that in American terms, and you're talking about over 200 million Americans who'd have to go in bomb shelters. Now, what do you think the American people would want their government to do, the American military to do, if they were faced with rocket attacks from a neighboring territory where 200 million people are rushing into a bomb shelter?
Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system has reportedly had a success rate of about 90% so far in shooting down those Hamas missiles. Israel continued its campaign to destroy Hamas rockets and the infrastructure to manufacture those rockets. The IDF reported more than 100 underground missile launches were hit and a number of houses used by Hamas leaders. One senior security source said not a single Hamas brigade commander has a home to go back to. In Gaza, more than 50 Palestinians have died so far in the conflict. Yet to avoid civilian casualties, Israel employs a policy of warning Gazans. On the diplomatic front, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called a number of world leaders and said no other government would tolerate this kind of rocket fire. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Coming up, Ephraim Graham and Charlene Aaron are back with the latest on Miriam Ibrahim and what you can do to help Christians like her in Sudan.
The Christian woman who was sentenced to death in Sudan for her Christian faith is still stuck in that country. And for an update on Miriam Ibrahim, we turn now to Tina Ramirez with Hardwired, a nonprofit organization with legal contacts in Sudan. Tina, what's the latest on Miriam's status?
Well, as you may have heard, Miriam was released last week, but then she was placed under the U.S. Embassy's control, and another case was filed against her. So until that case has been dealt with, she's still forced to stay within the country. But her and her husband and her children are now safe at the U.S. Embassy until the appeal on the case is being dealt with.
Well, why hasn't she been able to leave, and why is this so complicated?
Well, I think it's a good question that everybody's asking. The charges were dismissed. She was at the airport. She should have just been able to go. Unfortunately, what happened is that the documents she was given by the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum and the South Sudanese government's embassy in Khartoum were travel documents from South Sudan. And so she was traveling outside the country on those documents, and the Sudanese government didn't recognize them. So they've charged her with falsifying documents and with her husband Daniel with abetting it. Even though she didn't have anything to do with it, it was the U.S. Embassy that was responsible for getting her those documents.
Wow. Well, we do know that she was forced, which is horrific, that she was forced to give birth, while shackled in that Sudanese prison.
Yeah.
How's her baby doing?
Well, the interview that she gave last week, which was a miracle that she was even able to give an interview, because I think she's under pretty tight lock and key right now at the embassy, in that she stated that she was worried that her baby's legs weren't developing properly because of the way that she was giving birth. Her doctors had advised the prison officials to let her go and deliver at the hospital, and they didn't allow her to. So she actually was chained in both legs and was not able to give birth in the normal manner. It's really horrific. I'm sure that there are many medical issues that they're going to have to deal with in the future, and we're working to get them that assistance.
Wow. Well, what can CBN's viewers do to help Miriam and her children?
Well, there are a few different things that people can do. We believe that really the ultimate issue here is the apostasy law in Sudan that's oppressing so many people, but there are other Christians that are being prosecuted under the apostasy law, which says that if you're a Muslim and you leave your faith, you become a Christian, then you can be put to death. So there are 2 other cases that we know of in Sudan, and we want to change that law. And the 5 lawyers defending Miriam are trying to change that law as well. They're all Muslim, and yet them and a massive public amount of support is arising in order to change the law. So I think that so that this doesn't happen to anyone else, we need to change the law. It's not just about rescuing one woman out of the country, which must happen. It's about changing the law so that people aren't facing the same kind of oppression under this government. So if your viewers want to, they can go to our website at hardwiredglobal.org, and they can sign a petition where we have to stand with the lawyers and the people of Sudan to change that law. But we also are trying to gain some support for the lawyers. Miriam and her husband were unable to pay them. So there are many Muslim lawyers defending Christians in Sudan, and they don't have support, and their lives are in danger when they do it, because imagine a Muslim defending an apostate. Yes. So that's a second thing. And then the third thing is that a lot of the people protesting at Miriam's trial and her support, and who have been mobilizing the public support against the government in Sudan, which is really where the important change needs to occur, they have been attending trainings that we've been doing on religious freedom. And so these are Muslims and Christians standing together saying that if there's no religious freedom in Sudan, there's no future for the country. So if they want to help us train more people so that more people will stand up in the defense of people accused of apostasy like Miriam, then we would love their support. And I'm sure that when Miriam and Daniel come here, they will need other support, and we can connect your viewers with that as well.
Excellent.
So,
Tina Ramirez, thank you so much for
You're
standing
welcome.
on the front line with this case. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Up next, a marriage on the rocks. See how this couple's marriage was saved and how what they learned can help you and your spouse.
Angel Davis was so miserable in her marriage that she actually looked forward to her husband dying, but not anymore.
Now, the Christian psychotherapist believes it is possible to fix a broken marriage no matter how bad it may seem, and all it takes is you.
Paul Strand brings us this encouraging story of how one spouse can save a marriage.
Angel Davis expected the perfect Christian marriage with husband Lee, but when he didn't measure up to all her expectations and wouldn't put up with her trying to change him, she began fantasizing a way out.
Because I'm a Christian, I didn't think divorce was an option. So I felt stuck and trapped. And I even thought about him dying because I felt like that was the only way out. That's how dark my heart had gotten.
That was probably the thing that hurt me the most.
Lee believes Angel should never have been depending on him for things humans just can't deliver at the deepest level.
Your spouse can't make you happy, and if you are waiting for that, you're probably going to be waiting forever.
This Christian psychotherapist says she even began to listen to Satan's twisted logic for why her marriage should end.
I got to the point where I thought if I left my husband, I could do more for the Lord.
But then a friend brought Angel to a life-changing moment.
She looked me in the eye and she said, Angel, where in the Bible does it say you can do this for the reason you want to do this? And I knew the word. And so it was like cold water in my face.
That's when she truly surrendered her marriage and herself to God, and he began planting in her heart the principles of how one spouse can save a troubled marriage and change their husband or wife the right way.
What therapist Angel Davis has shown hundreds of people here in her office, and now in her book, The Perfecting Storm, is the secret to changing your spouse for the better. Rest in changing you first.
Angel witnessed a radical example of this when her friends Ron and Carrie were tottering on the edge of divorce after Carrie found out Ron was having an affair and didn't really want to change. But Carrie, though bitterly hurt and not wanting to forgive Ron, put herself before God and heard him tell her this about Ron.
I was to take him back, and we were to forge a path of reconciliation.
Ron's sexual sins had cost him his job and his home, and he was expecting to lose his family. But then Carrie told him what she'd heard from God and that she was going to grit her teeth and obey.
For her to be obedient to that, despite the fact that she was undergoing so much pain and so much hurt, all I could do was, in all honesty, I lost it. I mean, I just broke down and sobbed in front of her.
He's extremely grateful because he knows that I basically gave him a gift that he did not deserve.
Carrie's willingness to bend and change led Ron to wanting to bend and change too. It's been several years since Ron's affair and Carrie's taking him back, and now they say their 29-year marriage is better than ever.
When you put aside your feelings and put aside your arguments and say, you know what, I'm going to obey God like she did, radical things happen.
It is possible for your marriage to be restored. It is possible to fall in love with your husband once again.
Meanwhile, Angel was practicing the same things Carrie had done when Ron and Carrie's marriage seemed doomed, like letting God change her rather than insisting husband Lee change, like receiving inner healing that she says most of us need, like beginning to show Lee real respect because God said to.
And guess what? He started acting in ways that I had longed for him to act all those years.
All this takes learning to hear God's voice and obey his marching orders.
It just gives certainty, gives security, gives direction, and he's talking all the time, and we're hardwired to hear his voice, but we got to figure out how to hear it. He is the still small voice, and he speaks in many different ways.
God taught her real enemy wasn't Lee, but the devil who wants to kill and destroy marriages.
I had been looking at my husband as the enemy, and it was like God took that veil off, and I saw I'm fighting the wrong battle.
As Angel's been teaching and sharing these principles around her Athens, Georgia area and through the Perfecting Storm, others have seen their marriages profit, like Clay and Debbie Huckabee.
I finally stopped spending so much time worrying about what Clay was doing, and I started working on my own self and get my own act together.
I don't think it's ever been better, and I feel like that's largely due to her, but because we've gotten to where we enjoy working at it.
Friend Leslie McCullough is so enthusiastic about the Perfecting Storm, she and her husband have been selling it at their place, Brett's Restaurant. Angel had to keep interrupting her lunch with us there to sign copies. She's just not an excited author, though. She believes with all her heart in what she's written because she's seen it radically affect her own marriage and so many of those around her.
If you'll break before God and learn to listen to his voice, Angel guarantees he'll give you his divine guidance and his plans to make your marriage work. Then you really will have a marriage made in heaven. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Athens, Georgia.
The World Cup semifinals wrapped Wednesday, and Germany and Argentina are the winners. They'll face off for the championship Sunday in Brazil.
And while most of the attention has been focused on the matches on the field, churches and ministries have been working to spread the gospel to the fans. George Thomas has that story.
This is another game day here in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. Thousands of fans have come from everywhere to support their teams. The government reports 600,000 foreign tourists visiting Brazil this month. Many come from Muslim countries like Algeria and Iran, where they may have never heard about Jesus. It's a unique opportunity to help them hear the gospel message. And that's why many churches and ministries have deployed a small army of evangelists to the streets and parks of the city to greet these soccer fans and share the good news of salvation.
We understand that the Word of God completely transforms the life and history of a person. And that's why the Bible Society of Brazil prepared special literature for this World Cup period. We prepared 100,000 copies of the Bible with covers for each host city of the World Cup.
Young people are leading the effort to take this festival of evangelism to the streets of Brazil. Their joy and enthusiasm attracts the visiting fans.
This man lost his wife in a fire and became blind. He stopped and talked with me for half an hour. I told him about Jesus, and suddenly he said, "Now I understand the way to the truth." And at that moment, he gave his life to Jesus.
Youth with a Mission is helping to coordinate the evangelism and says that if churches and ministries carry out all their plans in the 12 host cities, over 1.5 million people could become followers of Christ during this World Cup.
It is great because we have a population from all over the world. So they are coming, they are getting to know our nation. Brazil is as big as a continent. So on those 12 cities, in all of them, we have great ministries, and they are all involved. That helps the unity of the church to work for the kingdom, having people saved.
The goals for Brazilian Christians during this World Cup are salvations. They know that their celebration here will be echoed in heaven. George Thomas, CBN News.
Such a joy to see people spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's
that's
such
what
a
we are
wonderful thing.
called to do.
Amen.
It's why we exist.
Amen. Salt and light. Well, that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Certainly hope you'll join us again right here next time. It's Thursday. Make it a thankful one.